If you've ever had your day wrecked by a single phone call, you know the exact sound I heard when my life derailed. It wasn't dramatic, just the usual ding of a voicemail. Except this one was from a bank. Mr. Lennox, this is Regina from W. Stoke Financial. We're calling to inform you that your mortgage account for the property on Crestwood Drive is 60 days past due. As the cosigner, you are legally... Wait, what? Let me rewind. I'm Peter Lennox, 32, corporate lawyer, mostly suits and sarcasm, very little patience. I have a healthy credit score, an unhealthy obsession with podcasts about murder, and exactly 0 properties in Crestwood. That voicemail hit me like a brick to the back of the head. I wasn't confused, I was furious, because I don't have a mortgage, not even a doghouse in my name. And Crestwood, that's the address of my younger brother, James. James, the baby of the family, the self-proclaimed ideas guy, and the reason my parents bought a fireproof safe to hide their checks in. He'd always been the golden child, if that child dipped everything he touched in debt and dysfunction. I hadn't spoken to James in months, not since the last time he called me crying about how his crypto was hacked by aliens and needed a loan. But the fact that my name was tied to his mortgage, that wasn't just a mistake. It was a declaration of war. I called the bank immediately. This must be some sort of error, I said, pacing in my office, already tossing aside the idea of lunch. I never co-signed anything for anyone, least of all my brother. I understand your concern, Mr. Lennox, the woman replied, but we have a mortgage document on file signed by you, dated 6 months ago. 6 months? Are you kidding me? I asked her to email it. The PDF hit my inbox before I could sit down. And there it was. My name, my signature, a scanned copy of my driver's license. Except I never signed that paper. But someone did a damn good job making it look like I did. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, nearly identical, but the slant was just a hair off, like whoever forged it was using a printed copy as a reference. Amateur mistake, the kind of thing you might catch if you were, say, a lawyer. I opened a Slack message and fired off a message to Miller, my best friend, college roommate, and conveniently a forensic document specialist who owed me a favor after I defended him in that very embarrassing dog custody dispute. He called back 5 minutes later. Hey, Pete, you sound like someone just ran over your credit score. Close, I said. I think my parents just forged my signature to co-sign James's mortgage. Can you take a look? There was a pause. Wait, your parents? That's like getting stabbed and realizing the knife has your mom's initials engraved on it. I sent him the file. 10 minutes later, he confirmed what I already knew. The signature was a forgery. Not a bad one, but enough to catch in court. And just like that, the fog in my head cleared. I wasn't going crazy. They really did it. They'd use me again. I drove to my parents' house that night. A modest 2-story in the suburbs, complete with a cookie-cutter lawn and a freshly waxed SUV that James didn't pay a dime for. I texted, "Be there in 10. We need to talk." My mom replied with a heart emoji. You know the kind of heart that feels like a butcher's blade wrapped in glitter? That's the one. Dinner was already on the table when I walked in. Classic distraction tactics. Chicken parmesan, garlic bread, and guilt. Peter, my mom beamed, you never stop by anymore. Sit, I made your favorite. Sure, I said, but I came for the main course. Fraud. The silence. His shrug was the final straw. I'm giving you 24 hours to walk into that bank and confess everything. Tell them it was fraud, or I go to the police myself. Peter, my mom pleaded. I stood. 24 hours. Tick-tock. I didn't slam the door on my way out, but it was tempting. You'd think that after discovering my parents committed fraud in my name, I'd hit rock bottom. But as it turns out, the mortgage was just the appetizer. The real buffet of betrayal came after I opened Pandora's box, also known as my credit report. Back in my apartment, I poured myself a whiskey, 2 fingers neat, and logged into every financial site I could remember ever using. Credit Karma, Experian, even those sketchy ones that promise to boost your score instantly if you blink twice and give them your social security number. At first, it didn't look too bad. The mortgage was obviously there, glaring at me like an unpaid bar tab. But then I scrolled further. Credit card accounts. 3 of them. All opened within the last 6 months, all maxed out, all in my name. Then I spotted a personal loan application for $50,000. Denied, thankfully, but someone had tried, and that someone was clearly not me. My pulse spiked. Whoever did this wasn't just playing Monopoly with my mortgage. They were trying to build a house of cards with my name on the deed. I called Miller again. His voice on the end sounded exactly like the voice of a man pulling on a pair of latex gloves before a legal autopsy. "All right," he said, "we're going full-blown crime scene on this. Get comfortable." He looped in another contact, Solstice Evans. That's not a code name, it's her real name. And yes, she sounds like a tech vigilante. She used to work for the feds on white-collar crime. Now she freelanced, mostly investigating corporate embezzlement and the occasional, "Oops, I think my husband is using my ID to fund his side chick's credit card situations." I sent over every document, every account, every weird inquiry on my report. Within 2 hours, Solstice called me back and dropped the kind of number that makes your stomach hit the floor. "Peter," she said, "the total exposure we're looking at is around $300,000. That's spread across a combination of fraudulent credit cards, your investment accounts, and, of course, the Crestwood mortgage." I felt like I was going to throw up. They touched my investment accounts? She didn't sugarcoat it. Yes, someone accessed your Roth IRA using a spoofed login. We're digging into how they bypassed the 2-factor authentication. And Peter, there's more. There's always more. "Your brother," she said, "has been applying for legal assistant jobs using your credentials." I blinked. What? She submitted a resume using your education, your law license number, even your old headshot. I found one instance where he almost got hired at a mid-size firm in Denver. I was speechless. He's not just burning your finances, he's impersonating you professionally. That night, I barely slept. I froze my credit, locked every account, reset passwords, filed a fraud affidavit with the FTC, called the banks, filed an identity theft report. And through it all, I kept seeing James's smug face, my mother's trembling hands, my dad's gritted teeth. They did this. They didn't just gamble with my name, they sold it. The next evening, I pulled together everything. A full dossier, statements, emails, forged applications, screenshots. Miller looked it over and said, "This is enough to open an FBI file." I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. I pointed to the documents. "You have 24 hours. You call the banks. You call the mortgage lender. You confess everything and get my name off all of it." My dad clenched his jaw. "You destroy your own family over some credit?" "No," I said. "You destroyed this family the moment you treated me like a backup plan. This is me finally flipping the board." The next morning felt like the calm before a lawsuit. I wasn't expecting an apology, but I was hoping for something that resembled shame. Instead, at 10:17 a.m., I got a text from my mom that said, "We talked to the bank. It's complicated. Please don't do anything rash. Let's keep this in the family." Attached was a photo of her cat curled up on the couch. Yes, the woman who forged my name and financially waterboarded me also thought a sleeping tabby might soften the blow. Rash. That ship had sailed. We were officially in scorched earth territory. Miller and I met up at his office, with Solstice dialed in on speaker. She had news. "Peter, I hope you're sitting down," she said. "I'm not. I'm leaning on rage and spite. Let's go. There's evidence of deeper fraud, multiple accounts tied to your social security number, some in your name, others using a variation of it. But the worst part? We found a shell company." "A shell company?" "Yes, registered under Lennox Development Partners. Guess who signed as managing partner? You. Guess who opened it? Your brother, with your father's help." I stared at Miller, who was gripping his pen like it owed him money. The LLC was used to funnel funds from what looks like a private lending group, and they were pitching it at the country club. Wait, what? They've been using your reputation, your credentials, to convince people to invest. A few of the investors have already filed fraud complaints. I buried my face in my hands. My family hadn't just committed fraud. They'd constructed a fake business using my identity, presented it as a legitimate development group, and used it to scam people at brunch. Peter, Solstice continued, this is no longer a civil issue. You need to report this to the authorities today, because if even one investor presses charges and your name is still on the paperwork, you could be liable. Miller chimed in. We'll handle that, but we also need to get ahead of whatever story your parents are cooking up. Spoiler alert, it was a wild one, because at 3:42 p.m. the bank called me again. This time it wasn't Regina, it was her supervisor. Mr. Lennox, he said, your parents have filed a complaint against you. They claim you forged the cosigner agreement and are now attempting to slander them. Miller let out an audible laugh from across the desk. Oh, they're playing chess now, he muttered. I didn't respond. I was too busy trying to process the reality that my own parents had just reversed me to avoid consequences. I drove straight to the bank, sudden, evidence folder in hand, lawyer at my side. We walked into the branch and requested a fraud escalation hearing. The manager, a man named Frank who looked like he spent his weekends fishing and regretting fatherhood, led us into a conference room. I dropped the file like it was a subpoena. Here's the truth, I said, opening to the page with my actual signature next to the forgery. Compare them. I've never signed this mortgage, and you're about to be part of a massive federal investigation if you keep treating this like a family spat. Frank examined the paperwork, Solstice's metadata analysis, Miller's affidavit, the printed credit report with 5 fraudulent entries, and finally, the email I dug up from my mom's inbox. Yes, I peeked, where she literally wrote, "We'll handle the paperwork. Peter will understand once it's done." By the time we finished, Frank looked like he needed a cigarette and a priest.
Honestly, at that point, I wasn't sure what worse even meant. But I got my answer. Peter, she said, your brother used your bar association credentials to apply for legal jobs again, but now he's faked work history too. He said he was associate counsel at Lennox Holdings? He even submitted fake court filings with your e-signature. I paused. But Lennox Holdings doesn't exist. It does now, registered in Delaware under your name. He used an AI generator to create legal memos with your credentials slapped on. He's building a fake career path as me. Exactly. But it gets worse. Of course it does. I traced activity on your investment account. There's a shadow account linked to a fake advisory firm. Looks like they've been siphoning funds through fractional withdrawals, small enough to dodge alerts. Someone backdated forms and made it look like you authorized it months ago. My voice was calm, but my blood pressure probably broke a ceiling tile. Solstice, is this jail-worthy? For him? Yes. For you, if we don't act fast, potentially. You're now a person of interest in a growing white-collar fraud web. Dramatic irony. The lawyer about to sue his own family for crimes they blamed on him. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I drafted a detailed fraud affidavit, built a timeline, and recorded a video statement, because if James somehow decided to fake a confession, I needed to be 10 steps ahead. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was the police. Mr. Lennox, are you aware that your parents have accused you of financial fraud and elder abuse? I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. They're filing what? An official complaint. Claims you manipulated them into signing over documents and now you're blackmailing them. I didn't even hesitate. Officer, I have documentation proving the opposite and I'm happy to provide it. Then I'd suggest coming down to the station. Should I bring my lawyer or a popcorn bucket? Click. Miller and I met with the detective that afternoon.
The guy looked like he'd seen one too many family betrayal stories on Netflix and was not in the mood. I handed him a thumb drive. Every document, every fraudulent signature, and if you want something extra juicy, I tapped my phone. Here's a screen recording of James emailing himself fake court credentials. It's like watching someone build a crime with a Canva template. The detective blinked. This is extensive. It's a buffet of federal felonies. He sat back. You know we'll need to involve financial crimes on this. Already ahead of you, I said. Solstice Evans. She used to work with your division. His eyebrows lifted. You got Evans on this? Damn, okay. He excused himself. When he came back, he looked different, more serious, more alert, like someone just told him the rabbit hole was a sinkhole. Mr. Lennox, he said carefully, you're not just a victim. You're a key witness in what may become a criminal case involving identity theft, money laundering, and investment fraud. We're going to need you to testify. I exhaled. Finally, the tide was turning. When the police say, we'll be in touch, it's usually vague cop speak. But not this time, because within 72 hours, Solstice called me and said the words I'd been waiting for. They're issuing search warrants. Your brother's house, your parents, and the Lennox Holdings storage unit they forgot to pay rent on. Apparently, James had been storing company documents at a U-Haul facility like it was Fort Knox. Spoiler, it was full of printed contracts, burner phones, and one whiteboard with the words, investors equals trust equals dollar dollar. That might have been the saddest business plan since Fire Festival. Meanwhile, the FBI's... But here's the twist. That wasn't the end. Because while James was busy trying to escape federal prosecution via arcade parking lot, he had also been busy contacting people, posting in forums, sending emails, including one to my boss. Yep, James sent my firm's managing partner a confidential whistleblower letter claiming I'd orchestrated a fake fraud story to sabotage his entrepreneurial success. He attached blurry PDFs and screenshots of doctored emails he apparently made using Comic Sans. You read that right. My brother tried to ruin my legal career using Comic Fricking Sans. Fortunately, my boss forwarded it to me with a single line. This is either the worst fraud I've ever seen or the saddest cry for help. I laughed so hard I nearly fell out of my office chair. Miller laughed harder. But the worst part? Even after all this, James in custody, my parents under investigation, federal agents involved, I still got one last Hail Mary text from my mom. Please don't go to the media. This is private family business. We can explain everything. I stared at it for a while. Then I replied, you had your chance to explain. Now it's the government's turn. If you ever want to know how broken a family is, watch what happens when the word indictment enters a group chat. Not that mine was still messaging me. After the arrests, they went silent. The only notifications I got were court summonses and legal updates, and one accidental thumbs up from my dad on a Facebook post about restitution law. Anyway, the investigation escalated fast because the feds didn't just... They were running a Ponzi scheme, Peter. At least $400,000 in fake investments over 18 months. Some of the money cycled through offshore accounts. Offshore? Cayman Islands? Also, fun fact, your name is listed as a guarantor for a fishing boat that doesn't exist. I didn't even ask. The FBI expanded the charges. Now it wasn't just identity theft and wire fraud. It was racketeering, impersonation, and organized financial crime. James? He pled not guilty. Of course he did. By the time the trial officially began, the case had made local headlines. Not big national news, just the kind of middle-class scandal suburban Facebook groups feast on. You know the ones. Neighbor's son accused of using law degree to launder casino money. Is your HOA president running a Ponzi scheme too? The courtroom was packed. Retired neighbors, former PTA moms, one guy I swear I saw once at a Target electronics section 5 years ago. All there for the show, and I was front row center. James sat at the defense table, looking like a deflated influencer. Slicked back hair, desperate smile, and the resting face of someone who still thought this was all just a big misunderstanding. My parents, 2 seats behind him. My mom had tissues stuffed into every sleeve like emotional ammo. My dad wore his "I'm the real victim here" face. I was called on day 3. The bailiff said my name, and everything slowed down. I looked at her and said, "That's the problem. You knew I'd be okay, so you didn't care if you wrecked me in the process." Then I turned and walked away. Sentencing day didn't feel real. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and consequences. I sat in the front row beside Miller, who whispered, "So, what are you hoping for? Justice or poetic irony?" "Honestly," I said, "I'll take silence. And a court-ordered restraining order, right?" The judge entered. The courtroom stood, and everything I'd waited months for came down to the next 30 minutes. James was first. He stood with the smugness of a man who still thought he could spin his way out of anything. His lawyer tried one last time to paint him as a misguided entrepreneur with untreated trauma. The judge wasn't having it. "Mr. Lennox, you orchestrated a fraudulent scheme using your brother's identity and professional credibility, defrauded multiple individuals, and committed acts of impersonation, financial manipulation, and false documentation. You've shown no remorse, only arrogance." Pause. "You are sentenced to 18 years in federal prison." James looked stunned, like someone just told him brunch was canceled for life. My dad went next. The court had emails, text messages, and even a voice memo of him saying, "Peter's too successful for his own good. This way, we all win." He got 15 years. My mother cried through hers. She begged the judge for mercy, said she just wanted the family to survive. But the judge had read every document, including the one where she joked about letting Peter clean up the mess like usual. She was sentenced to 12 years. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just breathed. It was over. Outside the courtroom, Stan came up to me again. He shook my hand and said, "I'm glad they finally got held accountable, and I'm even more glad you stood up to them." Then he hugged me. I didn't realize how much I needed that. Weeks passed. Life got quieter. I started volunteering for a financial abuse nonprofit, spoke at seminars about identity fraud and family exploitation, helped a woman navigate her mother stealing her inheritance, helped a teenager whose uncle wrecked his credit. Each story reminded me I wasn't alone, and I wasn't the last. I started a restitution fund with part of the civil payout I won from the case, small but meaningful, and for the first time in a long time, I slept deeply. No buzzing phone, no bank voicemails, no forged documents waiting in the shadows, just peace. Then one day, I got a letter from James. It was written from prison, a rambling mix of blame, fake apologies, and one final request. "When I get out, maybe you could help me rebuild. You've always been the fixer." I folded the letter once, twice, and dropped it straight into the shredder. Because I'm not the fixer anymore. I'm the line they never should have crossed.